welcome everyone. Our day 2 of the conference is equally exciting. Our panelists are all executives and here to share their stories and career strategies. Executives have the power to put plans, actions, or laws into effect. Reaching to that position requires achievement in your career. Stepping up in one's career can seem difficult. The same is true if one is considering changing industries, but it doesn't have to be daunting, particularly if one considers the wisdom these experts will share with us today. Let's welcome our 3 executives and hear their secrets and learn from them. The panel will help each member connect to the power within us, within you. And with that, I am going to now hand over to Carolyn Morgan, who will be our moderator for the panel. Carolyn, stage is yours.
Thank you, Kalpana. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to those of you in, I think you said Miami, Florida, that some of us are jealous of. I'm not so much. You can do that. I like where I am. Yes, this morning we are starting off with an executives panel. Our innovatives panel yesterday was so much fun and insightful. The panelists were wonderful. This is a fairly informal panel that's happening. So, we just want to get to know who you are and hear your secrets and any tips that you can share with us. The way that this is going to work today is we will start out with, speaking of, home duties, we will start out with each panelist will speak to us for 5 to 7 minutes or so. Tell us how you got to where you are, what you're doing right now, and then we'll have a Q&A session. This is, we have an hour and a half for this session, so we have a lot of time to answer questions. And if you have any questions for our panelists, please feel free to put them in the chat in Zoom or in the Q&A session on Whova. We've already got a lot of really great questions, so be prepared, panelists. There's some good ones here. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what you have to say with us. We're going to start today with Uma Wellingkar. Uma Wellingkar is the SVP Global Head of Products for Infor. She's responsible for the product management and operations for all applications at Infor. Her team drives the strategy and roadmap for Infor Industry Solutions, working with industry strategists and general managers responsible for the various industries. She's worked at both startups and enterprise tech companies, including Siebel and Oracle, starting as an engineer and then moving into the product role. In her prior role at 3VR, the team was working with companies to use video analytics to predict outcomes. She's passionate about early education and volunteering to drive equal opportunity for all, especially in technology. She has a master's in mathematics from the University of Memphis and a mechanical engineering from the University of Bombay. Please help me welcome Uma Wellingkar.
Thank you. I want to get started by saying, happy Mother's Day to everyone. And thank you all for really taking the time today to be with us and really listen to what we have to say. I feel like, everything was covered in the intro, so I really don't know what else to say, but what I would kind of say is everything for any time you want to do anything in life, it starts really early, right? So you have mentors, and I saw some of those panel questions that came up, and it was talking about mentorship. It was talking about a few different things. And we look at mentors really later in life. And I feel like we all have to start really early. And the mentors could be someone like really close to you, could be your neighbor. It could be someone, for me, it was someone like my grandma who was way ahead of her times, right? So for her, it was all about, again, equal rights, right? So in her mind, it didn't matter who you were. It didn't really matter if you're a boy, girl, anything. You should be able to accomplish what you need to get done. And she's the one who pushed us, right? She pushed us every day of our life to say, you can do anything anyone can do. So I always say she's ahead of our time. And it's not that she really mentored you, but she put that in your head. So it was constantly something that was told to us every single time that we would have to do something. So any place, anytime, I would say start really early, right? So for me, it was family. In some cases, it could be, people at school. So again, start early, primary, that's where I would kind of like go. But one of the things is, again, growing up, it's sort of that, typical sort of immigrant story, but, growing up in countries where a lot of times when we say education, it's really just STEM, right? People kind of go, oh, math and science, you got to do math and science. There's much more to math and science, but I still feel like now, especially, it's important for girls to be in math and science, right? Because there's so much happening. There's so much automation being done. There's all of this AI and algorithms that's happening that we need women more in the field, right? Because otherwise you get a lot of biases already built into a lot of the programs and the programming that you write. So I encourage a lot of times, start early. Even if people say, a lot of times, even in this day and age, people will say, oh, girls are not good in math and science. And I'd say that's not true. Or, people of, you really need diverse backgrounds, right? And it doesn't matter when we say diversity, it's also disability. It's, differently abled people that will provide so much insight into what we build and develop, right, as we go forward. So it's really important to sort of look at all of those and get that into as you're kind of looking and growing into your career and taking a look at how it'll impact everyone else. So for me, again, it started as, being sort of driven into math and science. It did come naturally, so it was a little bit easier. That's how I ended up again in the US, came to do my master's, started working in the hospitality industry, actually. And I always say it's my claim to fame. Worked in company that really owned like Harrah's, Homewood Suites, Hamptons, and really building the reservation systems for them. That was my first foray into the hoteling industry and including how they set stuff up. So there are things that you learn early in your career that kind of sticks with you. And for me, that's what's stuck in my head, which is sort of why I gravitate a lot towards also making sure customers are successful, right? Because, when you come into a hotel, you want to make sure people are happy, they're checked in, things are done, the reservations all taken care of. And so that's sort of, again, first job out of school, that's what kind of set me up. And then I went into and I did CRM for a lot of years. So I almost tell people I grew up on it. Again, when you look at CRM, a lot of it is, again, not just sales, but also customer experience and marketing, really that whole 360 view of the customer, what you do. A lot of it really, that's what really drives your career. People kind of don't think about it, but that's a huge piece of the puzzle, right? Taking care of customers is where your career kind of drives, talking to people, getting these ideas out. And for me, that was, a driving factor for, again, moving from an engineering background into products, because I really wanted to listen to what the customers have to say, and I really wanted to know what was going on so we could sort of drive stuff into the products. So that's how I sort of moved from engineering into product management. And I never have looked back. It was like the best decision that I think I made to get that going. And I worked for a number of years at, Seaman, obviously. I learned a lot being in a big company like Oracle, just everything that you can do, right? Like really collaboration across all of the different groups, not just from a technology standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, but business development, support renewals, just the support team, the services team, just the whole collaboration is what kind of like drove. And it's also how you treat people is how you get treated. So that's really an important aspect of how you can sort of really grow in your career. You never do anything on your own. It's the people around you that make you who you are. And so that's sort of something that's driven me throughout my career. The other thing that really I've learned one of the biggest things one of my early mentors really taught me is to listen. Listen before you speak. And he always used to say a quiet leader is the best leader. And that's sort of another driving factor into, where I tell people that too. You don't have to be the loudest in the room, and you don't have to be the smartest in the room, but it's really listening to people and being able to provide insights. That's sort of what, makes a difference. And that's sort of led to where I am now with Infor. Again, I lead all of the applications from product management standpoint, operations, but it's really my team that drives everything, right? They're the ones who do all of the hard work. We're there to kind of like remove some of the roadblocks, right? If there's anything that comes into play and driving some of those, it's really everybody else that does the work. You really are there to help them out and make sure that things are moving in the right direction, or if there's something that needs to be tweaked, that we can make that happen and work with them to do it. So that's what I wake up to every single day. Again, I love what I do. Another big aspect for me is really mentorship. And that was one of the questions that came up as well. There's tons of, companies that provide mentorship. And I always tell people having mentorships within the company is good, but sometimes it's good to have a mentor outside of work, because that allows you to sort of, talk pretty freely, but also gives you good insights into what's happening in other places as well. So that's another piece of it that you learn. So I love doing some of the mentorship, because you learn both ways, right? So you learn from both ways. Early volunteering in schools. I also sort of volunteer at CASA, which is, being an advocate for foster youth. So a big sort of driver for me is really, like I said, early education and healthcare are the two things that I think really make a difference for us on where we want to be and where we want to go, because those are two things that really drive us. So that's sort of a little bit about, sort of who I am, what drives me. A lot of it on my career path was sort of covered earlier, so I don't want to repeat that. So that's what I wanted to end with. And then I know there was a lot of questions, so we'll cover some of those in the questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Uma. That is wonderful. I wrote down a lot of stuff. We're going to get into some of that a little bit later. I love just your oversight, your overview, I think is the thing I took away from what you do as an executive. You're an overviewer. Your job is to see to know what everyone's doing in the room. You said you don't have to be the loudest or the most talkative person in the room, but you know what everyone's up to. So I love that. I love that. We'll talk more. Thank you very much. Our next panelist that we're going to introduce, Matt Zieman.
Hi.
Hello, Matt. Let me introduce you. Matt Zieman is a director of software support in the Financial Services Global Business Unit at Oracle. She lives in the sleepy town of Sausalito, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, with her husband and 2 children, one of which is away at grad school. She was a software developer who craved people contact and now runs a global team of nearly 30 people working with many customers across the world. Networking and serving others is so fulfilling that she's dedicated most of her time, even outside of work, to do this. She's a strong believer in the power of connections and empathy, which helps her accomplish many goals daily. Matt has many interests and boils it down to being curious about life, so you'll find her surfing YouTube in order to learn something new. Matt speaks 4 languages, which she uses to connect with different cultures. Please help me welcome Matt Zieman.
Thank you. So yeah, I think Uma, I just agree with so many things you've said. I see leaders as being not the people that tell others what to do, but the ones that are listening to the ones that really know what's going on and need to follow that. So you're only as good as the people that work for you. So I think hiring great people is key, because they're the ones that are going to make you look good. So that's a huge takeaway for me. And so I always try and hire with good attitudes, because I think you can teach people certain aptitudes, but you cannot teach them attitudes. So you can have really smart people with bad attitudes that can change a team. So I always try and look for people with really great attitudes and that can learn and curious about life. So to me, you know, you always hear that saying that growth happens at the end of the comfort zone. I think that is so true. It's harder to do than, you know, it sounds so easy, but you have to find those uncomfortable things to do. And so for me, I'm also an immigrant, moved to America 23 years ago. And I started looking back to see how did I have the courage to move with a 13-month-old, a husband that couldn't work. I had never been to the States before, to any of the places here. I didn't have a degree. I have a diploma in programming, but I did not have a degree. And so I started looking back to see what was the thing that drove me and the courage that I got to actually move. And I realized fear drove me, which is not a good way to live life, right? But in this case, fear was a big part of what made me come to this country, because I lived in South Africa. There was a lot of turmoil. And every day I feared for my life and for my baby's life. And I used to practice getting her out of her car seat and stuff like that. And I just couldn't live like that. So sometimes fear is a good driver, and but you don't want to use that as a driver every day. So what I like to do is I love to imagine what I want to happen. So even first thing in the morning in my day, if I'm going to go into a meeting, especially if it's a stressful meeting or something like that, I like to imagine how I want it to be. I want to imagine that even though it's going to be a difficult conversation, people are going to be in a good mood and things like that. So I'll go into that meeting expecting a good mood, expecting things to go well, because I feel like a lot of what we imagine in our heads actually does come true. So often we spend a lot of time worrying and doing things like, just thinking about the worst case scenario. But I feel like that doesn't help me at all. So I always go back, forward thinking, okay, this is how I want it to be. And I imagine it all through in my head, how I want it to run. And so when it's happening, it almost steers it in that direction. So it just gives me that little bit of boost and confidence that I need to make it happen. So I wished I had learned that when I was much younger, because this kind of thing I started learning much later. And now I'm teaching my kids. And actually, because I love and I've seen how it works, I started on the sideline doing life coaching. And so I'm teaching kids from college on, not just career or things, but also financial. I think there's just such a lack of financial information for our kids. Kids will go and take out a credit card just to get a t-shirt that says Visa on it. Who wants to wear that anyway? You know what I mean? It's like they just do crazy things just for a t-shirt. And so that really, I feel like it's such an important thing for us to teach the younger people about what we've learned. And yes, they won't do everything and they'll pick up some things. But I was just proud that my son, who's 17, he's a gamer, big gamer. So he met these kids online from Wisconsin, we're in California, but I mean, they've become really good friends. They contacted me and asked me if I was willing to help them understand what credit scores were and where they should start putting their money. And these are seniors in college that are now trying to get ahead. So to me, that's like the most fulfilling thing, is to be able to share what I've learned. I don't know everything, but at least I've shared quite a bit. The people that taught me the most are my parents. My parents have a middle school education. They're 86 years old. They grew up in Portugal. And, you think, okay, so how much can a person who hasn't even gone to high school teach you, right? But they are just simple and factual. Like my dad will say, well, you can't spend more than you're making. You know, I mean, we all know that, but hey, how many of people do stick to that rule? But he, you know, they were just always encouraging. And they also moved from Portugal to South Africa to give my sister and I a better life. And that's exactly what I did 32 years later to the day, believe it or not, 21st of March, 32 years later, I was doing the same thing, which is kind of crazy. But I see them as a huge success, because even though they only had middle school, they moved countries. They didn't speak the language, which they kind of didn't really learn to speak English, even living there for 27 years, which is kind of, they speak very broken English, but they still were a success. They retired at 55. They've never worked again. So they've actually been retired longer than they've worked. And they've got a great life. They've got a great marriage. So to me, when I look at success and all that, I see not just what you do at work. I see what you do at home. You know, you've got to be happy at home. You've got to be happy at work. You've got to be, it's a whole life thing. It's not just about what you do. So when you look at yourself as a success, take all the parts of your life and see that as almost like a spoke on a bicycle. If one spoke doesn't work, the whole bike will just, you know, wobble along. And so wobbling along life is hard. You need to make every part of your life kind of feel like it's working. And so that's what I try and aim at. When I started in HR. When I left school, I'll tell you, by the time I reached senior year, I kind of didn't want to go to college. I was so tired of college, of studying, put it that way. I wanted to learn things that I wanted to learn and not just be told, oh, you've got to do this and this. So I actually didn't go. I went straight to work. I started working in HR, which I love people. That's one thing I've always loved, is I've loved people. So maybe it's easier for me to kind of network across the different groups because of the interest I have in people. But I always just thought, okay, I'll go work in HR. That's got a lot of people contact. I'll get to know people. And then I started doing salaries in there, and I started seeing all the tech money that people could make. And I thought, oh, I wonder if I can do that. So I decided, why not? You know, so I applied at my work back home in South Africa. They had a program that if you passed this aptitude test, you could go and do this programming, and they would pay for you while you're there and pay for your programming. So I thought, well, why not? Let me go try. But I didn't actually pass my aptitude test. And so I ended up going to the guy and saying, I want to speak to the owner of the school because I'm not good at aptitude tests, but I know I can do this because I'm hardworking. And he goes, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, I know, I want to talk to him because if I get a chance to explain, I'll be able to get in this class. And he goes, okay, show up for the next 6 weeks, every Monday night. And then if you pass that with 80%, you can start. So I was talking to the owner without knowing that I was talking to the owner. So he let me go and I did the 6 weeks and I passed. And out of 210 people, I came 10th in the end, and by then already, I think we were only about 150 people. So it wasn't, I still pushed, even though I didn't pass the aptitude test, I still pushed. And so one thing I want to say is don't let some little blocks stand in your way of doing things. Sometimes we put those blocks in front of us ourselves. We like, oh, I don't have a certificate that proves that I'm qualified to do something. You know, many things we do in our world doesn't need a certificate. You can go and learn a particular thing. Like I went and learned programming. I didn't need to go do a 4-year degree to learn how to program. I did a 1 year, and that's what I focused on. You don't need to go, like I'm doing Spanish right now with a lady in Brazil. All I want to do is, I don't want to be, you know, perfect Spanish speaking. I want to be able to go to Spain and be able to speak to the locals and understand them and not be perfect. It's okay not to be perfect. And so don't stop yourself from doing things that just because there's no piece of paper. My parents didn't have a piece of paper. They didn't even have a high school. I don't have a degree. It doesn't stop me. I still want to learn lots of things. I'm a dressmaker because I like making my own clothes. So I went and did dressmaking and learned how to do that. Just do things you want to do. Be curious about life. And as you go through that process, I feel like when you curious and you do things you enjoy, you fulfill lots of parts in your life that help you in the rest of your life, in work, in all that kind of environment. So my path as my career didn't take an exact path. I went from HR, I did programming. I landed up finished programming and I hated it. I thought, oh, this is so boring because I'm not talking to anybody. All I'm doing is coding, and that didn't like fulfill me. So then I moved into a role that was between the programmers and the customers, and I would be able to talk to both. So I could understand both. So it was great. A customer service like Uma was very important to me. I feel like if you've got great customer service, if you listen to people and you give them what they want, it makes your life easy and fulfilled. So, and you see that you're actually making an impact on people's lives. So I did that for a while. And then the opportunity, kind of this tiny sliver of a door opened for me to come to America because Y2K was coming up, and they had stopped teaching COBOL in America for many years. So they didn't have enough COBOL programmers to actually do the Y2K project. Now, I know some people here might be too young to remember what Y2K was, but you know, the year in all the computers only used to be 2 digits, and it had to be 4. So we had to come in and change all the programs to have 4 digits for the year. Otherwise, everything was going to turn to 00, right? So I came and I had to take steps back, go do a job that I didn't enjoy as a programmer, but to get to this country. So I came over, did the job for like, you know, got all the Y2K stuff sorted out. And then I was back into programming, which is not the fulfilling job I wanted. But I started saying, okay, they wanted me to travel as a programmer. They wanted me to go to customer sites and stuff. And the reason we moved here was for a better quality of life. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be safe. So in the end, I decided, okay, I'm going to move over to support because they didn't need me to travel in support. So I'd be home every night. And that was super important for my husband and I, to be home every night, be with my daughter. And I wanted another child, which only happened 7 years later. But I landed up, you know, going into support, and that's where I am now. And the support gives me the people contact that I need. I have the team that does all the hard work with the people. I used to do that as a support engineer. It's very hard. You have to switch gears all the time, work with different people, etc. But now I'm overseeing everything. So only the big issues come to me, right? Or I guide the team on how to handle a difficult situation. So again, they always say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you should be listening more than you talk, right? That's what Uma said earlier. It's so true. I do talk a lot though. So I always have to be remembering that I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But, you know, you just got to be yourself and understand that everybody is kind of in the same shoes. People are, you know, they're all trying to do their best. They're all trying to be happy. Everybody's just trying their best to do things. So you've got to look at the world as helpers. I think when I go into a room of people, I always see that people want you to succeed. People want you to do well, you know, and so you want other people. You don't want people to get up on stage, be talking to somebody and fall as they're going up the stairs or something. You want everybody to do well. So I feel like the world is full of helpers. You know, there are some negative people, but usually it's a good thing. So for me, I'd say be curious, have a good attitude, and take small steps in those curiosity, in those things that you're curious about, to actually grow and make yourself uncomfortable. So thank you for the opportunity.
My goodness, thank you, Matt. I'm looking forward to talking to you more too. I love, you know, look at the world as if it's full of helpers. You know, the world is full of helpers. That is so wonderful. And yeah, somebody said, thank you for the blast from the past for Y2K. We forget all these things that we think are going to be such big deals. You know, that's another story. We think the world is going to end. Didn't end. It's okay. It's good. I'm so glad it didn't end, but all right. Our next panelist, Tanu Pant, is an entrepreneur with a passion for building businesses with social impact. She's the founder and CEO of the White Mulberry, an online marketplace for responsible gifting that creates exceptionally beautiful gifts by curating handcrafted products exclusively from small businesses across the world. Each gift purchased from this platform generates direct income for 4 to 8 small businesses. Tanu was the president of the Stanford Sloan Partners Program and led several initiatives for the Sloan partner community at Stanford University, GSB. She has been associated with several other prestigious organizations internationally, including the Tata Institute of Social Sciences and the National Human Rights Commission. Her social impact has spanned leadership roles in several nonprofit organizations, working on issues ranging from communities in conflict, diminishing local cultures due to urbanization, the welfare of street children, and networking for senior citizens. She's been an invited speaker at the British Council and also several women's entrepreneurship events. Tanu runs a nonprofit called the Open Cocoon, which works towards leveraging international tourism as a strong driving force for the social and economic upliftment of local populations across the world. Their mission is to be a catalyst for harnessing this potential and perpetuating tangible benefits. So please help me welcome Tanu Pant.
Thank you. Thank you, Carrie. I sometimes am so surprised about hearing my own profile. But yeah, and thank you, Uma and Matt, for great insights. I already have a lot of takeaways from this meeting. So yeah, it was actually great listening to both of you. And it's such an honor to be invited to be part of this group. And today I'm hoping to share a side of me that is never highlighted on my profile anywhere. And I'd like to start by reciting a short poem before I say anything else. And here it goes. Hiding the hurt, hiding the pain, hiding the tears that fall like rain. Saying I'm fine when I'm anything but. This ache in my soul rips at my gut. Waiting for someone to see I wear a mask and care enough to remove it. Is that too much to ask? This poem is about the smile we let the world see, while inside we are dying a little every day. This is the story of the countless stay-at-home women in our neighborhoods, each one brimming with talent and potential. Each one's spirit hesitates to embrace the world because it is stifled by constraints, self-doubt, and fears. While we dutifully dedicate the prime years of our lives to fulfill every need of our families, we pay the price for it with our personal dreams and aspirations. As the years pass, our dreams seem to recede further and threaten to disappear. We start to believe that our once cherished skills are irrelevant and our talents unworthy of appreciation. This was the story of my life for many years. Right after getting married, I had made a conscious choice of dedicating myself to being a stay-at-home mom while forfeiting the rewards of a flourishing career to take care of my family full-time. It was a decision that I proudly stuck by for many years until I started to realize that a fear that I had once suppressed was becoming a reality. A sinking feeling dawned upon me as it became clear that by putting my career on the back seat during the prime years of my life, I had sacrificed too much professional growth to catch up and lost way too much time not acquiring any skills. My dreams of the past that appeared achievable once seemed so distant now. I panicked because I had much less time now, fewer skills, and non-existent confidence. It was in the midst of this emotional upheaval, I also realized that there were many other women in the same situation as me, and started to wonder if there was a way I could somehow help them use their talents to fuel their professional ambitions while raising their families. It was a powerful thought that consumed me for several months. Being as hopelessly lost as a person could ever be, I decided to do the one thing that came to my mind. I simply started to encourage many of my friends to come out and let their talents be known to the world. It was these little conversations that made me realize that they were engulfed in the same ocean of doubts and fears that I had been familiar with over the years. Is my work good enough? Does anyone even want to see this? I just want to do what I love doing. I don't want to deal with the complexities of starting a business. How would I ever find customers? I don't know anything about marketing. How would I build a team? How would I handle my family commitments along this? And my family is way too important to take a second place in my life. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of women who were troubled by these questions, I made a bold decision to start the White Mulberry, an organization to remove these hurdles for stay-at-home women and bring out the inherent glamour in their talents and their contributions to their homes. We connected talented women in the community with local customers to bring them creative satisfaction, recognition, and revenue. There was a scary road ahead of me when I started. I had never run a business before that and struggled with even the basic concepts of finance and marketing. But as they say, it all starts with making the firm decision and sticking to it. I made many mistakes along the way and suffered the consequences of my wrong decisions and have had people leave me at the most critical times. I was forced to learn many skills that I could never have imagined for myself. But pretty much the only thing that I always did right was to lift myself up every time I fell and to never forget the lesson that my fall had taught me. Today, we have expanded our mission to include not just women, but every small business across the world. The White Mulberry is now a thriving online marketplace, a socially responsible gifting platform that features handcrafted products by small businesses from the US, India, Uganda, Madagascar, Kenya, Bangladesh. We have also served thousands of retail customers and dozens of companies, including Facebook, McKinsey, Sutter Health, Capgemini, Mastech, PwC, Keller Williams, just to name a few. We have many in the list. So what I want to say is that no matter where you are, what you have, or how late it is, the thing that really matters is to take that first crucial step in your journey to success. I had my confidence, I had the least amount of confidence left in me when I took this decision to start the White Mulberry. But I just, at that point of time, I just thought, let me just take one step at a time and literally just one ahead of the other. I wasn't thinking about anything global. I wasn't thinking even about how would I even survive the next day in terms of this business. But I just thought, I need to get up and do something for myself. I proved I had a good track record to, gain the confidence from my past. But because I had not worked over the years, so many years, I think 13 years, I was out of work. And that was a decision that I made that I loved. I still feel proud of myself. But when I restarted, there were questions, there were doubts, there were fears, there was everything negative inside me. But the one positive thing that I was thinking about myself was, I did it earlier. And it's not that I don't have anything. I do have something within me. And let me just ignite that. let me feel, just show it to myself and start from here. And that one step I took 3 years ago. And now every single day I meet with a lot of challenges and struggles and everything. But when I am to measure success, you know, and it was in, you know, one of these conferences that I attended, a beautiful thing about measuring success I learned there was you can only measure success looking back. Every single day you're fighting, every single day you're struggling. But when you look back, you see how far you have traveled. And that is what I do now. When I want to derive encouragement from my own work, I look at my life backwards from where I was to where I am today. So I would like to conclude by saying that depression is the secret a lot of us share. I was fortunate to have the strength and support to be able to pull myself out of the downward spiral before my flame extinguished. Grateful for the opportunity that I received, I decided to make it the mission of my life to create a platform that gives the opportunity to every small business owner to blossom to her fullest potential. And this has been my story in a nutshell. There is so much more to talk about, and there's so much more to say. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today. But if you'd like to connect personally, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Tanu. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, that's
Okay,
right.
thank you. Obviously, names are important. I want to get it right. So let's give a round of applause to all of our panelists. Thank you very much, all of you, for being so vulnerable with your stories and your insight. And let's dig into that a little bit more. So, yeah, Brian's going to spotlight all of us so that we can sit here and chat. I want to start. We'll start with a, I'll say, sort of kind of an easy question. There's a question or many questions in our Whova app around, I guess, approaching executives. How do we talk to our executives? And so I want to ask, you know, whichever ones of you want to answer this, you can all answer this. How do you like to be approached by people, by your employees? How do you like to be approached by them when they have questions, concerns, ideas? You know, we're all very busy people. You have very busy lives. Do you want people to be direct? Do you want to, are you able to give them the time to kind of explore their ideas? What's the best way for you as a busy executive to be approached by your employees?
Shall I answer that? I don't know. From my perspective, when somebody has an idea or they have come to me with a problem, for example, I want them to have thought of the whole picture. Like, come to me with not just the problem, but what could potentially be the, you know, the fix for it, or other things I might not have thought about, and why something will work or why something won't work. So give me the big picture all in one, so that when I'm trying to make a decision, and try and say, what is she going to ask me? Like, when I go to my executives, I do the same. I don't want to go to them with something that's half thought of, because I know they're going to come back and then we're going to have to go ask questions. So my question is, I always say, what is he going to ask me or she going to ask me before? So I keep asking the questions. Why? Why this? Okay, this reason. Why that? Okay, this reason. So then in the end, by the time I do go, or by the time someone comes to me, all the questions should be kind of answered so that it doesn't waste time, right? That's the best I can give.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Uma or Tanu, do you have anything to add to that?
So I think, you know, what Matt covered was like spot on, but the other thing I would also say is, like, a lot of times people are afraid, and I would always say there's nothing to fear, right? Everybody is just like you. And so take that time to talk, and then especially in this sort of that COVID world, unfortunately or fortunately, we're in a lot of meetings, right? And it is too much that you can't go into the office and knock on somebody's door and walk in, right? Not even a door, a cube, any place. It's most open office, but even still, just walk into an office. So what I've said to a lot of people is that even if you don't see a spot on the calendar, everyone uses Slack or Teams or any of the communication channels. Use the communication channel to send a message, and people will respond, right? Because sometimes they may not be able to pick up a call, but most people, and I've seen this across the board, even the CEO of a company will respond to a message back to you. Just ask for time, or if you even have an idea that you just want to say, hey, I'm seeing this as a challenge, we need to solve for it. Send a message and people will respond. So don't wait, don't be afraid. People are always willing to talk and listen. They don't have the answers. That's really also each of us being vulnerable and saying that we don't have all the answers. So it's really important to connect.
Thank you.
Right. Since we have a startup, we are always transparent and we are all sharing ideas all the time. And it is always good to be clear and on the same platform. So we keep ourselves, always we have a very, very clear communication. But if I am to really think of myself as an employee, because a startup scenario is slightly different, you have to, like, if there is a 3 a.m. call, I just get up and take it. I answer all the questions. If there's a call from Bangladesh or if there's a call from Kenya, I just take it. I mean, I don't have an option that way. And if not, then as soon as I see, I'm always available. And so is my team. But when I think of myself as an employee, or, I just put myself, as a person, I need all the help from everywhere at this time of my life. So I don't hesitate asking any sort of question. I don't think any question is a small question, because there are so many things I struggle with every single day, that I don't know. Like, I'd be certainly asking Uma a lot about product management. I mean, okay, so how do you deal with that? And, I'm not equipped with the right set of skills, or I might just, call up Matt about it. And I will not think that this is the right time or that is the right time. I'll shoot a message and we'll wait patiently. And meanwhile, I'm also connecting with many more people to get my answers. Getting the answer is very important to your problem. And I feel that, one should not fear asking. Yeah.
Yeah. I was wondering, do any of you have a particular way that you like to say, I don't know? Because some people will say, some people don't like to say, I don't know. Do you have a certain way that you lean towards saying that?
No, I'm
You just,
pretty
I don't know.
direct.
Awesome, great.
I actually saw an article on Facebook, I think, that said, do not say, I'm sorry, say this instead. Do not say this. And yeah, sometimes it makes sense, but you know what? I feel like being honest is more, it makes more sense. If I say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, what does that mean about me as a person? It doesn't make me any less. So I feel just being honest is the best. And the one thing, we're all human, right? So it doesn't matter if you're an executive or not an executive, if you're a mom, we're all the same. We're all human. So we all just want to be treated the same way. That's how I'm feeling.
Can you tell us of any bosses that you had that you learned good skills or bad skills from? Any juicy boss stories?
Sometimes you do learn from bosses on how not to be. So I think one of my bosses taught me a lot about how to be, in the sense like coming prepared with things like that, because if I wasn't prepared, it was really not a good scenario. And so it also taught me how to not be when somebody isn't prepared, because I don't want to make people feel that way. So I just feel like, being open. And like Uma had mentioned, we don't know everything. You rely on everybody. That's why you hire smart people, because you can't be the smart one. You can't know everything, unless I guess you Elon Musk or something. I don't know. But I'm definitely, you got to hire smart people, and then you've got to trust them. And so that's the one thing I've learned is get the team and don't hire everybody that's like you. Hire different and diversity. And, you know, it doesn't matter. I think the more diverse, the more interesting the whole team is. And you see different points of views that you wouldn't see normally.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that the business world is opening up to diversity. Like it's starting to finally get it.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I was on a diversity meeting at Oracle, and I got on the call. We're all on Zoom, and I looked at this and I thought, is this really diverse? Like we all looked kind of the same, you know, some of us. But then they started telling their story, and then I realized that I had made up my mind about the people's faces that I shouldn't have. So sometimes, like, I saw so many men there and talking, but then I realized some of them had kids with disabilities, some of them, you know, gay people or whatever. So it was just like, even though I saw them as white men, I thought, oh, white men in diversity, it's kind of strange. But they had so much to offer, and I kind of made a mistake by just looking at their face, right? So I think we've got to look at people deeper than just what they look like.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would also say is one of the things that we've learned, especially working in the US, you have people from, you know, all different parts of the world here. That's one aspect of it, but you also have global teams, right? So you have people that are working in different parts of the world. And I would say even within Europe, it's so different, right? People in Germany, very different from people in the UK or France or the Netherlands. And so one of the things that I learned from, like good things I learned from a lot of my bosses or my managers were really very empathetic. They try to learn about different things, but I also learned what not to do, because sometimes I had one boss from a country that was so used to the way they would work that, you know, he would come out and say, it's okay to do this. You know, we can go, you know, take care of this in the parking lot. It's fine. Like we'll argue and we'll get it done. And I thought to myself, but that's not how we do it in the US, right? That's not the way we do things around here. We kind of listen to people's ideas, and we're, you know, we're a little bit, I'm not saying we're mature, but we kind of like are more sensitive to, you know, to taking some of these ideas up. And so one of the things I would tell people, especially given that it is a melting pot, that we all come from different cultures, that just take the effort and time to learn different cultures, just understand where people are coming from, because they may be saying certain things that may be insensitive to us, but when we have to learn about that, right? And for us to also learn others too, right? Like making that compromise and coming to a point where we're able to sort of not just understand each other, but take each other's point of view. And I think that's really key, because I still see that as a struggle even today, even with the teams that I have globally. They'll say, well, in my country, we do it this way. I'm like, yes, but now we're working together in this global ecosystem, right? So it's a learning process. We have to continuously learn on a daily basis, and keep always that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. When you diversify in whatever form that diversity takes, you have to slow down in order to continue to communicate in that way. Because we're not used to, you know, we are used to communicating with the people that communicate like us.
Right.
You can, you know, you're not learning a new language, you know, right?
Right.
So I love that. I love that. I want to ask Tana, do you have any insight on that? Because you're working with people all over the world as well. And
Yeah.
perhaps in a more sensitive, slow, artsy form.
Yeah.
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 Tell us what you have to say.
So yeah, one, if I am to really describe what I've learned is to be very sensitive towards the sensibilities of the people.
Yeah.
You have to understand where they're coming from. And, how I was when I started, you have so many ideas and you have so many of your own way of, putting things into process. But then you're working with so many people who, and especially given that, I used to have people who were not as, in like professional, like, I don't want to say that, but then who were not working in a professional setup before. So, I had to consider a lot of things before, putting my own ideas and thoughts into them. That, okay, while I did, but there was initially I just understood that probably it's not that well understood, or maybe I am misunderstood by a lot of people. This is not what I really was saying. Then I, realized that it's all because you've not worked in that setup and you would not understand why I'm saying, or, using those professional terms would not work over here. So I had to adapt and change, my ways of working. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's so important at every level, at every
Yes.
level of communication, work, business, when you're working with your peers, you've got to remember that we have different
Yeah.
experiences. All right, we have a question, as we have 3 women executives here. Do you see a glass ceiling for women and or people of color? And what's your best tip for breaking through that barrier?
I might myself. It is sort of a tough question. And the reason I say that is because it's, while there isn't quite a glass ceiling, there is in some cases, and I I started out, like I said, as an engineer. I was the first girl in my team. I'm a mech engineer. I was the only girl in my class, right? And so I've sort of having to learn to work with that, but I also see that now being in, and I've been in R&D all my life in every company that I've been in. And sometimes you are sort of the only voice in the room. And in a lot of ways, you do get drowned out. And I say this, like I said, not that I've struggled, but it is always still at the back of your mind. It's like Tanya said, it's like you question yourself, right? Because when you make a point or when you say something, you're kind of drowned out by a lot of the voices in the room. And to this day, it still happens. I see that happen to me even in today, right? Where I am. And so while, there isn't quite a glass ceiling, there is a little bit of that. And one of the reasons I keep saying that is people will say, hey, let's get women on the board. Let's get women in exec positions. And I'm like, you can't get women in exec positions unless you start early. So I always go back to my, I go back to the Bay Area roots, right? Like I go back to the Warriors and say strength in numbers. And it really is strength in numbers, right? You need to start early. You need to get a lot more women in the room, right? That you can get to that level. So it's not just getting one person up there, like the token people up there. It's really getting a lot of us in the room, so that way you get that equal opportunity. So it's not like a straight answer. In some sense it is. There is a little bit of that glass ceiling, but it also depends on which area you are within each of these different companies as well, right? So again, it's like, for me, this is why I'm so passionate about getting not just women, but especially women of color as well, right? And the other thing about, when we say diversity, not just the look, but, one, diverse ideas, people with different abilities. In a lot of ways, people don't do that. And we have a customer of ours, and they're in California, called Pride Industries. It's like a plug for them, right? But go look them up. And I did, talk to their CEO. And one of the things that he said to us as he was looking at it, their big thing is, hiring people with the different abilities. And he said, people say there's, not many, especially with the Great Resignation now and, not finding enough workers. He's like, there's so many people that are available to work that we don't kind of look at that aspect of it. We don't even look that these are people that are willing to work, able to work, but we just ignore it, right? It's just that our hiring processes don't kind of look at this diverse set of people that are already there. And so this is why I kind of, let's say, glass ceiling is a little different, not just from a women's standpoint, it's just across the board, right? Because we're just not getting people early enough, right? In places where they need to be.
Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I haven't struggled with that. I think mainly because I've been at the company so long. So the longer you're there, people know who you are. And so that glass ceiling isn't as much there. Like even in my management group right now, I am the only woman. So, but they know me. They've known me for many years. So they'll listen, you know what I mean, when I want to talk, but that's not the case for many people. So I think I've just had a different way. I do feel the same as Uma with having, I have this thing where in California, they were saying one woman on every board. And I started thinking, is that a good thing? Because I don't want it to, imagine that one person on that board, everyone won't actually take them serious. They'll say, you're only here because we had to have one woman on the board. So to me, it almost like mixes up this message. So I have a very mixed feeling about this. I kind of want people to be there, but on their own accord. Like when I hire right now, I'm not just hiring women, I'm hiring the best person, but I make sure that we have women in the mix. So there's a mix of things. And that's where Oracle is taking a different approach now too. We are trying to hire with different abilities. We're trying to make sure we have veterans. We're trying to make sure. So it's not like you have to hire those people, but they've got to be in the mix, because if they don't have an opportunity to be there, then they'll never get picked. But in the end, you still have to pick the people that are good for the job, right? So yeah, starting early, giving opportunities for people to be in those interviews, I think that's key. I don't want these like quotas to be the driving force, because then I wouldn't feel good if I get chosen to be on the board just because I'm a woman. I've got to be there because I'm actually the one that's supposed to be there. So yeah, it's not an easy question.
No, it's not. And but I think that comes back to the mentoring girls and
right.
and starting, and not just girls, but I mean children in general,
Confident.
diverse the diversity amongst children to get them into these places with the attitudes that they can. They're allowed to, they're welcomed to explore this pathway. And so yeah, I really like, do you know of any specific efforts to work with children and young adults?
That's why I'm doing the life coaching.
Yeah.
Because even if I can make a difference in just a few people, I know I'm not huge and I haven't got this big business doing it. This is I do maybe 2 hours a week of it. I feel like it's so important, even if I just teach 10 kids how to do it.
I mean, I think there are some, especially in schools, which we don't sort of see, right? And my daughter's schooling, I have only one child, but my daughter's schooling was all in Los Altos, right? And so if you look at the school district itself, there's a lot of not just parents who come and volunteer, but they also have a lot of, kids that mentor or that are there to help other kids. But a lot of times people don't know that, right? Like people don't even know that they can go ask for help, that there is this available for them to, you know, just get help to do homework and stuff. So if you think about, especially, you know, the Los Altos Mountain View district, we have a huge population that is the ultra wealthy, right? You know, the C-suites that are out there. And then we have also a huge migrant worker population as well, whose parents have never been to school, right? They're the first generation immigrants that come in. And there is this help available in schools that they can avail, but a lot of times it's this fear, right? Like they really don't want to kind of like ask for help sometimes. Some do, some are very good, some will ask, but you know, some don't. And so there's this availability that I think not just us, but putting that out there, saying there's information, and sometimes you just go ask. So every single time when I talk at places, whether it's that, you know, big brother, big sister, I just was on a panel a couple of months ago and I said, don't fear. Again, it's this fear that makes us not ask, and just letting go of that fear, getting that in is a big thing. There's a lot of things, even companies now as part of DEI, you know, that Matt mentioned, every company does it, but sometimes I feel like we also do it as a token, and we need to kind of change that attitude, right? It's not a numbers game. It has to come within every single one of us, every single one of our managers, because we have to enable them to be able to hire that way as well. And it's changing culture for every single person in the company, right? Or any place sort of in some sense in the world as well. But it's really enabling even the first level managers to understand how to hire and what to do and how to look for sort of, you know, candidates, right, beyond what you see on the resume. So there's a lot of work companies are doing, but there's a lot for us to learn as we go through this process.
Yeah, it's true. All right, I'm going to pivot just a little bit. Someone's saying, I have a question from my mentee. How can she negotiate job salaries from a position of strength and not be bogged down by cultural programming? Woohoo! That's an executive question.
Yeah, I think every time you bring up salary,
Right.
you have to actually think about what you've brought to the table. You've got to go in showing what you've done, how you can move forward, you know, all those things. There's, you know, it depends where you are on that scale. Sometimes you, like, I don't have the ability to just say, oh yeah, I'll give you an increase, or, you know what I mean? It's more, in bigger companies, it takes a lot of steps. I'd have to go through to someone else and someone else maybe. And it depends on the time of the year. There's a lot of like little things like that that make a difference. So I just feel like when you have to come from a position of strength in showing your value. And so whatever that means in your job, you have to show your value and be confident that what you're giving. I always believe you have to give more than you receive in money, you know, in anything actually. If you go out there to do something and give more than you expect to receive. So salary wise conversations, they're so difficult, honestly. I don't think I have a lot to offer on that. Maybe Uma has more, and Tanu.
I think our company is changing that a little bit. Like I've been at company, you know, been at Oracle for many years, right? So we used to do it like on that yearly basis. There was a budget. Most companies now are changing it to look at it from a value standpoint, but you know, there's still a budget, right? Like you have a yearly budget, but it's more around, to Matt's point, what value that you're generating. So like our company doesn't do annual raises anymore or bonuses, but it's really looking at where someone is at any given point in time, and then, you know, looking at what can be done to increase it. So that's a huge aspect of it. And the other thing I also tell generally everyone in our teams as well, right? Like, don't to find another job and then say, hey, you know what, I'm getting this. So, what are you going to do to me? That doesn't really work very well in most cases, because by then you're leaving for other reasons, right? Not just the money aspect of it. So it's a constant conversation, but I have to say, including me, I never have ever negotiated a salary. Someone, said, hey, this is what you're getting. And I take that and I'm done. And I don't know if it's women, but I can tell you historically, having men and women in my team, women never come and ask for anything. Never. You kind of have to you take a look at people in your team and go, okay, who should I do what? It's always sort of others that have asked me for raises, but I've never had ever. And I can tell you in my 20 plus years of, or almost now, maybe more than that, years of being a manager, not one single woman in my team has ever asked me for a raise,
with me.
which is telling, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's-
How about you, Tanu?
I don't really have much to say because, I have really not gone to negotiate a salary, but I can say from a standpoint of a person who hires, I look for the value proposition. I mean, certainly there has to be a value. And yeah, I mean, what I look for is not just the technical, as Matt says, there has to be more. There has to be some, values that I look for in a person that's particular to my company. I mean, I really look for those. And when it comes to salary negotiation, there's obviously a budget that we allocate for, a post or, something. So what we do is we obviously go ahead with that. We cannot exceed our budget, and it's a startup. We have to, we work on we have a bootstrap budget. So, but we wait, for a few months or for a year. So at this point of time, I let them negotiate on a post. I let them negotiate a little bit on salary. I mean, or maybe bonuses like we share. So all of that. But yeah, I mean, along with the, the academic qualification, what we do look for is, the value that the person is bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And is, is of course, matching the sensibilities of the company, keeping that in mind. Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. I would like to know, what is your greatest business moment that you would like to share? Something wonderful. I mean, just take that as you'd like.
You're on mute, Uma.
I lost a little of the question. I
Okay.
couldn't hear.
So-
Yeah.
Just tell us about a great business moment that you had, either as an executive or as an employee, with an executive. I'd like to hear just like something that you're proud of, or maybe is a little bit silly or embarrassing, just some story that you'd like to tell us that's business related.
I will tell a story of me being in Oracle, and and this is important in the sense that, what I said earlier about, the collaboration and, the give and take. And so we were just finishing an M&A. So one of the acquisitions, and there was, one little thing that we had missed, not a good thing to do, right? So there was a thing that we had missed, and we were looking at, the acquiring company that was coming in. There were a bunch of customers. We knew which customers we needed to take forward, but there was one product that we weren't going to invest in going forward. And we needed to kind of send a message out to those customers saying we're not ready, but the close in control was December 31st, which means a lot of the people in the biz dev team were off. And so I had to go to the head of our, biz dev team because the rest of the people were off, right? It's the time of the year. And he went to bat, right? And one of the reasons he did it was because he said, hey, you work really well with our team. You're always there for us. And, you respond back to us and, you help us out. So I will do it. And if he hadn't done it, that closing control wouldn't have happened on the 31st. And that would have been a major disaster, right? So for me, that was like the most important thing, that he didn't care who I was and what I did and, what level I was in or any of that kind of stuff. He was like, we need to work together. We need to make this happen. And he got it done, right? Like he, got his hands dirty and got it done. And for me, that was sort of like really a good learning moment from both sides.
Nice.
For me, it's a completely different situation, but I feel really proud of myself for the interview process that I did coming to America, because if you can imagine, it's 1999 or 98 actually. We still had dial-up internet. We used to hear that going through, and I had to have interviews at 3 a.m. my time, and I had a baby that I was breastfeeding. So to keep her quiet, I was breastfeeding, I was on the phone, and luckily no videos back then. Thank God for that. Because I had all my papers that I hadn't been doing programming for 7 years, because I was a manager for 7 years. I had all the little notes trying to remind me all the programming things they could ask me. I had 5 people on the phone asking me questions. And like I said, in order to keep my baby quiet, I had to put a, breastfeed her at the same time. So I had this table full of things, and I got the job. And I mean, I was just so scared because there were so many different parts that could have gone wrong there. But that kind of made me proud of like, hey, you do what you have to do. Like Tani gets up at 3 in the morning and has a conversation with somebody. You do what you have to do.
Okay. Do you have one, Tanu? Or you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. So for me, there are so many, my favorite, like, ever since I started the Mulberry, I've been, experiencing this wealth of experience, and sudden blast of everything that has happened. And yeah, I mean, so many people I've met, but what really stands out, a couple of things, that once when we moved to the US and my husband was doing his MBA from Stanford, and, they have this partnership, the President Partners Association, and where, you kind of do all the activities for the, the MBA graduates and also for the partners. You allocate the budgets and everything. So the first couple of months, I really was in awe of those presidents and, looked forward to meeting them and like, oh my God, how do you guys do it? And all of that. But then when it came to like, so every quarter it changed. And then there was once when, everyone suggested my name and I was like, oh my God, like, me? No, I mean, I don't even know how to speak. So yeah, I mean, I was young and, I never thought of myself like that. But when I just saw there's so much of trust and faith, I stood up and of course I won. And I was made the president. And then I was given this huge task of allocating the budgets and doing the finances and so many things I'd not even done or even thought of. And then there was once at the end of the year, I had to speak in front of 300 graduates. I mean, you hear like Steve Jobs do that. And I had to speak in front of them. I was like, why me? I mean, I have never done anything like that in my life. I wouldn't even imagine. I'll have a breakdown. You are spoiling it for sure. You are ruining it. You know that. But then, I was meant to probably, and I just stood there. I I remember I was so nervous. I started singing. I started with a song, and just to calm myself down. And of course, it went really well, and was really the highlight of the entire evening. And yeah, and also very proud to be the first Indian president ever in the Sloan program. And yeah, so that was one of those incidents. And yeah, the second one that really stands out is very recent, and that was I went to shop at Whole Foods, and I saw these amazing, beautiful, gorgeous looking baskets, and I was just completely in love with them as soon as I saw. They were beautiful. And I got one of those home, I bought, and I just looked at them. I looked at the place where it was made, and it looked handmade to me. And since we are in the same business, like, I want to have them on my platform by all means, no matter what. And that was an organization called 10 by 3. They do such an amazing job at employing women in the more underprivileged areas, and getting the handcrafted baskets made from them. So they do it in a very unique fashion, and I loved it. So I called them up, I fixed a meeting, and yeah, the whole moment of partnering with them was a moment for me. I mean, you partner with so many people, but partnering with an organization that's working for such a beautiful cause was a beautiful moment for me. Yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you. And so I just want to say, you are talking to Toastmasters here. So I challenge all of you here now to start your next speech with a song. Let's see how that happens. Woohoo! We're gonna take a little advice from you and see how that works. All right, we just have time for a few more minutes. Someone is asking, is mentoring a science or an art? And what background do you need to be an effective mentor?
I think everybody's a mentor. Everybody can be a mentor.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I said my parents were my mentors, they didn't have schooling. Don't stop yourself because you're not a professional or a this or that. That's only blocks you're putting in your way. You can help anyone. Anybody can help anyone. That's my feeling.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm not a technology person. I give better inputs to my son than my husband does, who's really a great person in technology. Yeah, but I have seen myself doing great at that, mentoring my son or his friends, or yeah, I'm at the PTA board in Mountain View district, so yeah, I do that too. So you really don't need a background for that.
I think you need connection. If you find somebody like you at work or in outside of work, like Uma said, it's great to have multiple mentors too, because you're going to get different things from different people. And so just connecting, I think if you connect with somebody and they've got the time for you and you've got the time for them, because the one thing I feel, a lot of people are afraid of networking. Like you say the word, there's a network event. Everyone's like, oh, I don't want to go. I'm going to have to talk about things. And so the way I see that is I'm going to make friends. I'm just going to go learn stories, go and find out stories. And so when you're learning about those stories, you'll see, oh, this person could help me with this type of thing. And then you just ask them, and that's a mentor. We've got too much invested in the words we use, and the words scare us sometimes. And I just try and break down those words to not be a mentor. It could just be a friend that's going to help you get through something. Just makes it easier.
And I also say, don't look at the titles.
Yes.
Very important.
Yeah.
Say a little bit more about that, Uma. What do you mean?
So I think one of the things that people kind of look at is, people kind of pay attention to like titles, and really titles don't really mean a whole lot than the person sort of talking. So you can be a mentor or mentee at any point in your life, because we all have the ability to give something at any stage of our life. And just having a title doesn't make people, better. It's like the attitude that Matt said is also very important. So I think it's like important to kind of like think about that and see sort of like the body of work that people have done, right? Than just looking at it from this person is so and so at this company, or any place else, right?
Yeah, wonderful. All right, we have 5 minutes left. I would love to hear from all of you. How do you balance busy work life and going to weddings in Florida? Work-life balance.
I think there's never, I will tell you this, I have only one child, but when I had my daughter, I thought, oh my God, what a wrong time to be pregnant. I should have never gotten pregnant at this time, right? Because I was, getting into a lot of the stuff. And so I don't think there's ever a right time. And don't kind of always think about that all the time, that, hey, I could be doing, there's different ways that you can, like some people choose, like us as a family, we as a family chose that, both my husband and I would work. But we also kind of got very lucky that our daughter had a lot of ecosystem help, right? Like our neighbors, and it's just a community. So I always tell people, it's a village. It really does take a village to raise a child. It doesn't matter if you're living in a city or a small town, but it really does take a village, and everybody kind of is willing to help out. So again, ask for help. There's nothing wrong in asking for help. And there's even companies that understand it, right? Maybe, 15 years ago, not as much, but people are a lot more understanding now. And especially with this work from home culture, you're never in the shut off mode, but take the time for yourself. I know I give advice, don't take it myself, but do that, right? People are there to help you every step of the way.
Yeah, there's helpers everywhere. I try and, I think my husband's a personal trainer. He's got his own business. So for me, eating healthy, exercising, and all that is super important, because if my husband puts on weight, nobody wants to go see him, right? So it's kind of part of the business. So I still make time, like now my son started driving. So I used to have the 8 to 9 blocked out and 3 to 4 blocked out to go fetch him and take him. Now I don't have to do that. So I kept that blocked out. And what I do is I put Peloton instead or go walk my dog. So I get those 2 breaks every day where I just either go on my bike or I go walk my dog. And that's in my calendar. And unless and everyone kind of knows, they look at my calendar, they won't try and put a meeting in that time, because I used to go pick up my son. Nobody knows he has a license now and he does it himself. So I'm just trying to do little things where if I need a half an hour here or there, I block it in my calendar and I do it. And so it helps me a little bit. And then just try and stop at a certain time so I can make dinner. So I put even the dinner time I have to put in my calendar to start making dinner. But I mean, you almost follow the calendar kind of thing. So I find my calendar is kind of super important to make me do things. I mean, I think there's a merge of, there's no more the balance, it's more of a merging. Like sometimes during the day, I might do my Peloton. Everyone's like, wow, she's riding her Peloton during the day. Well, sometimes I work late at night. So it's kind of like this merging of things.
Thank
Right.
you. Yeah.
So I have a very crazy schedule because my husband and I both have startups, and we have 2 kids, and they're like just about, like my older one is 13 and getting into the more troubled age, and then my younger one is 6. And so how, over the years, coming, like 13 years break, coming from that, what I realized was it is very important to take care of yourself first. So no matter what, I take some time of my own right in the morning, because if I'm, if that is taken care of, my entire day goes pretty much okay. And I've seen the difference that, when I don't do that, like by taking care of myself, I go out for my walks and I listen to the music, or a podcast or something that really enriches my soul at that time. Anything. It could be yoga, it could be anything. Music is what really resonates a lot with me, and I do that all the time. And so once I do that, that 1 hour is mine. Or, sometimes I get 45 minutes. Like today, it's Mother's Day, and then I had to wake up and I have this. And, so I woke up a little bit early, and I did, a little bit of yoga. I went outside, I, listened to music, and then I came and, my kids greeted me. So that, I do. And that I feel everyone has to find that balance for themselves. So this is my balance. I give time to myself, and I sort my mental health out first. What have I done? Because there's so many things that come my way every single day that gives me a lot of stress. So first is the release in the night, and then in the morning, I start my day like that, fresh. Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
what I do.
So good. And yes, I love the keeping the time blocked off that you used to drive your kid to school. My daughter's about to get her license on Thursday, hopefully. So I hadn't even thought of that idea. I was like, oh, I get to sleep in. Nope. Nope. Now I get to exercise. That would be great. Thank you, everyone. We are at the end of our time. I appreciate so much you spending your time on Mother's Day for that with us, sharing your insight. I'm sure we could go on for a lot longer. It has been a pleasure to chat with you all. Thank you for being so generous. And let's everyone unmute, say our thanks. Round of applause for our panelists.